Here we go. Welcome, everyone. We're so happy to have you here with us today. It's our exciting Module 7 on intersectional democracy, gender, and disability rights. And we are so fortunate to have two incredible educators to help co-facilitate this session, Tia Hins and Sarah Wiedrich. And they are put together an exciting, let's say, whole hour and a half before us coming up. And I know I've had the pleasure of working with both of them over the years here through Human Rights Educators USA. Tia has been working with us on our podcast program. And if you haven't checked out the Human Rights Education Now podcast, please do. And then Sarah's worked with us on a number of human rights education initiatives. But I will let them actually introduce themselves in more detail. So take it away. Oh, I think we already did the check-in.
Tia, you want to start?
Sure. So my name is Tia. I am a preschool teacher in Minnesota. Yes, my Minnesota accent will come out a little bit. It's fine. We'll just ignore it. I have a master's in human rights from University of Arizona, a master's in early ed, and working on my doctorate. Excuse me. I use she, they pronouns. I have a dynamic disability, which we will talk about later if anyone doesn't know what that is. I have ADHD and autism. And I have a gender, and I like to say that my gender is like a potato. It's there, but it changes. Different varieties of that. So yeah, Sarah, take it away.
Hi, everyone. I'm Sarah Wiedrecht. I am a high school social studies teacher, reporting live from my classroom. I'm located in Manchester, Connecticut, where I've taught for, I think, 8 years now. My background's in conflict and peace studies and the study of like the human reactions and handlings of conflict and peace studies. But then once I became a teacher, I took that and really hyper focused on human rights and how we can teach human rights and use human rights as a teaching tool. So here I teach a human rights class, which we have as a graduation requirement at my school. We think we might be the only ones in the country, but I sure hope I'm wrong when I say that. I like to think that other schools have implemented that, but we, for the past, I think now it might be 10 years. We might be hitting 10 years. It has been a graduation requirement. Every single student takes the class, and I teach all 4 options that we offer, maybe 5 options. And so I've done a lot of work with the curriculum and expanding it and so on. But then I also teach world history and sociology and a whole other conglomerate of things. So that's my education background and what I actually do for a living, yapping about human rights all day with high schoolers. I also have a gender, and generally speaking, have a lot of my life defaulted to the she, her side, but have also for a good part of my life really identified with the non-binary identity. Wasn't really able to put a word to it until a little bit later, and am trying to grow more comfortable with talking about that in a professional setting. So tonight's my night to do that. We're being brave. It's hard for teachers sometimes. And as far as the disability side of things goes, also diagnosed as on the spectrum. It was an adult diagnosis, but spent a good chunk of my childhood going through the trials and tribunals of being diagnosed with Tourette syndrome and all of the fun things that come along with that, and having a pretty moderately severe case most of my life that has resulted in me also being hard of hearing. So, everyone's allotted one front of the class reference, which is like the only movie that they ever made about Tourette syndrome, and it's about a teacher. So that's my life. I think that's it. All right. Christy, did you want to read through this?
Well, I think this one is just a framing slide that talks about what our program is, that we're really focusing in on human rights education and learning, but that lifelong process of teaching and learning, that many of you have participated in our workshops before and know that we're really just trying to kind of embody a lot of the work that we're doing, and really centering it also on respect and embodying a lot of the core human rights principles with this notion of trying to work toward justice and peace.
Awesome.
So the next slide. And I think you wanted to take this over from here.
Oh yeah. So we wanted to set kind of the mood here with some group expectations. Tia and I have already kind of opened up the door with some vulnerability and some, lived experience. And while that is definitely something that is, available for everyone to participate in and contribute to, it's also not expected. But this is a space where, personal connections may come out, or personal stories. So we ask for, basic respect of yourself, of ourselves, and so on, but also to respect your own boundaries, whatever you're comfortable with, sharing and talking about, whether it be in your practice, in your studies, in your life, whatever, to practice some self-care with that and to carry a growth mindset. Tia and I work in very different settings, and we have a lot of different examples of what you can do to bring the intersection of disability and gender into your learning space, into your classroom, into your life. And so we hope that you have a growth mindset in understanding that anything can be possible.
And to add to that, when I talk about stuff that I have done in my past, like the work, I come from a very clinical and academic way. So I do use some potentially triggering words just to give a heads up, especially gender violence and stuff like that that goes with that. So if you need to leave or anything like that, I understand. But yes, language like that will be used, especially when I am talking about my previous work.
Okay. So we wanted to start with an opening question here. You guys can put your answers in the chat. In what ways do you see gender identity and disability overlap or intersect in any space or situation? We got some, so women's rights and autism discrimination, or LGBTQ and disability.
Do you want to elaborate on the social stigma? I would love to hear it.
I mean, I was trying to find commonality, and there are cases where disability and as well as gender has a social stereotype, which sometimes comes as a result of not understanding what is happening within the context, and that's the thing that came into my mind.
Yeah. Yeah, the diagnosis later in life for women. Me, Sarah.
We had a whole conversation about that. Oh, thank you for bringing up the word hysteria. I got to teach the history of the word hysteria today, and these kids are looking at me like I'm a conspiracy theorist, and I'm like, no, you don't get it. This is important. Very, very important.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So we have some good connections here, important connections, I should say. Okay. Shall I keep it for another minute, or do we want to move on?
I feel like we can move on.
Okay.
If anyone has any other things, we can come back to it.
Great connections, though. All right, so we threw together some discussion questions. And I mean, I'm all in for us to unmute unless the jury prefers in the chat. But our questions, the first one we had here is, what is it like being a person with a disability in an educator role? And that doesn't necessarily have to be like a teacher. It can be someone who carries this role of educating people on something, how to do something, where to do something, and so on. So feel free, anyone, to unmute and give your thoughts.
You can also raise your hand too, so that we know where to go with that.
I think Ola has a hand up.
Yeah, so I'm not really a teacher with a disability, but sometimes as an autistic person, I have to be an educator and teaching like people how to deal with people with autism, because people with autism have different social skills than neurotypical people, and that can actually make them annoying to neurotypical people. And I have to explain to people why I do this, why I live like this, etc., repeatedly. And sometimes people don't believe me and stuff like that, or it's it's kind of annoying. And then I also feel like neurodivergent it's not really a disability. I mean, it can be, but it's an often overlooked aspect versus LGBTQ or physical disabilities, which have more attention, I think. So it's more important to be an educatable.
I love that you brought up that oftentimes people with disabilities have to serve as an educator to everyone every day of their life. Thank you for putting that into words.
Corinne, I think I said your name right.
Yes, surprisingly enough, you did. I found that I've recently disclosed my disability to my employer to get accommodations, and immediately there was almost an infantilization that occurred, as if I have not been doing my job the same way for the last 5 years. So that role of being questioned, I'm not sure how that, if that really answers the question, is then you have to backtrack. And like Olga said, then you have to teach them that I'm still the same person I was yesterday. I can tell you that my brain works a different way, but I'm still going to do my job the same way. I just need you to make space for me. Like this, there's a theory of many disabilities, to touch on what Olga said, being social disabilities, and they exist because the world won't make space for us. And the disability would virtually disappear if the world would make space for us. And I am also ADHD. I'm not sure how you feel about that term. I've kind of embraced it. So again, my brain works in loops. I guess that's how I interpreted the question. As again, as Olga said, we have to teach people about ourselves because there's a stereotype. They hear autism, they hear ADHD. Oh, you can't remember to do anything. Oh, you're this. Oh, you're that. Like, no, I'm the same person I was 5 minutes ago. I apologize for that roller coaster.
Don't apologize. No. That was, I think you used one of my favorite words to bring up when talking about this topic, and that is infantilization, which is especially, at least in my experience, if you have, like you said, a more social based or even just to do with your interactions disability, infantilization happens real quick in a lot of spaces, especially when you are considered a leader. um, and I feel like there's definitely an intersection with gender there too.
Well, that's why I brought up hysteria. It's for centuries women were infantilized, and then people with disabilities are infantilized, and then you have that intersection of, well, nothing's ever going to happen there, and we can look at the medical community. I don't want to take up all the time here. It looks like other people want to speak, and I will monopolize the entire time if you let me. Please
Well,
don't.
thank you so much for your thoughts. Danielle, did you want to speak?
Sure, I'd love to. Thank you so much for hosting this training. This is exciting. I'm extraordinarily privileged in that I'm diagnosed with ADHD, and so I don't face nearly as many barriers when it comes to teaching with this particular neuro spiciness, as my sister and I like to call it. I think one good thing that I'd like to share is that it has made me exponentially more open-minded and understanding of the need for accommodations in the classroom. So it's been a really exciting discovery of how much classrooms need to shift away from spaces of like conformity and shift much more into spaces of like comfort. I mean, I know that sounds silly, but then again, the gender intersection, right? The expectation that I understand this emotional intelligence and that I have this sense of like nurturing my students actually works in my favor, even though then the frustrating piece is then because that's expected of me, going above and beyond in spaces where the system itself isn't going above and beyond does get to be quite heavy. And then also, again, the having to educate other people, right? Like having to tell my colleagues, no, that student isn't getting an accommodation because they're lazy. No, that student isn't using their accommodation because they don't like you. So a bit of a give and take. So I feel it's been transformative on a personal level and frustrating on a bureaucratic level.
Absolutely. I often say something similar of like, I'm a good teacher because I was the challenging student, and I was
Yes.
the challenging student oftentimes because
Right.
I was an unserved student. But I'm still a challenging employee sometimes
Yes.
because
Yeah.
I tell you, actually, so the good news in the last couple days, to that point, I have a principal that apparently is now listening to our need for accommodations, and she proved it the other day. And I was like,
Very nice.
but like that's rare, right?
Right.
To be
Right.
honored as the adult.
Right.
Does make you a good teacher though. It gives us the upper hand.
We're nailing it.
Would anyone else like to share their thoughts on that question? Okay. Let's see. So similarly, how does gender impact the lived experiences of educators? Olga, would you like to share?
Yes. So this is probably a rare occurrence, but to be honest with you all, I don't really, luckily with my personal experience, I have not really felt the effects of gender disparities. I've been like being a woman to me hasn't really affected me at all. It's my autism that brought on breakups in past relationships and discrimination, not being a woman. And that's rare, I heard, for female educators who have disabilities, but just thought that was an interesting point to bring.
Absolutely. Tia, I know this is a question that you have a lot of thoughts on, I believe. Did you want to maybe elaborate it a little bit more, better than I could?
Yeah, so my history a little bit is not teaching is rape culture and sexual violence education. And so when I became a teacher, I was like, oh, super glad that I got a master's degree in human rights with that focus because I'm not going to be doing any of that in the classroom. Funny enough, I feel like I do a lot of it in the classroom. Gender impacts almost every single day of my job, teaching 3 and 4 year olds. It's interesting how gray or how black and white their thinking becomes at such a young age. And so a lot of it is that is kind of going away from gender norms of like a conversation today about hair. Like, I don't know why hair has become a big thing in my classroom. Long hair has to be for girls, short hair has to be for boys. Just these little conversations that happen every day. I kind of am trying to change the narrative for my little humans. And a big way of doing that for me, I've without having the conversations, is like the books that I bring into my classroom. Big advocate for the library system, go library. So I try to bring books that I try to go the opposite almost. So we're talking about the Olympics. So hockey books, it's not just men playing hockey. I'm trying to find books that have women too. And so like this dynamic of having like not just showing one way of life. And I do that a lot with like all of the conversations and all of the books, the toys and all the stuff. Um, it's it's very interesting. And then me being I am very femme presenting right now, but that is not always how I am. And so my kids have kind of figured that out and have their little language of, oh, is Miss Tia having a boy day? Which they're 3 and 4, I'll give them a pass of like that. But it's interesting having that open dialogue with them and being able to understand that uh, we're just trying to be human. And I am very adamant about the human experience with my kids rather than the boy experience and the girl experience. So yeah, gender is front in my brain almost, not almost every single day of my teaching. Uh, yeah, it's very interesting. Oh, I do not like the pockets in women's clothes. You are correct on that.
Why is that? I mean, I feel like I know the answer, but like,
Versus consumerism.
what if I don't want a purse? I just want
Consumerism.
pockets. I just want pockets. Listen, I'm 5 feet tall. All right. I already can't find clothes, and now I need clothes with pocket. And don't even get me started about the whole clothing, like fashion standard for female teachers. And like, good luck finding that if you're child sized. Don't even get me started. All right, I'll open up. Let's see. We had two other sentence starters, I suppose, discussion starters here. One of them was teaching about gender in the classroom and teaching about disability in the classroom. We kind of have these as I'm curious about where everyone's coming from. And what have you learned in a classroom setting? What have you taught in the classroom setting? What have you not? Et cetera, when it comes to these two topics, either independently or intersecting. If anyone has any thoughts on those.
Go ahead, Olga.
So I have thoughts about disability in the classroom. So believe it or not, I've been in school. I'm already getting my master's degree, but it wasn't until age 24 that I learned about the discrimination and issues that autistic people face, such as constant relationship problems, problems getting jobs, or maybe or being forced to mask your identity. Like I never knew what it meant when people would tell me act normal for your own safety. I never knew why they told me that until I took this internship in Nebraska, which was actually supposed to be for Agate Fossil Beds National Monument, like building disability boat kits. But to me, it turned into more of a teaching experience about disability rights and teaching you how lacking disability rights on the different things that society needs to be doing for both physically disabled and neurodivergent people to make society a better place for them. But I feel like in terms of teaching about disability in the classroom, it happens too late in life. It needs to be taught early in life, and it really misses a lot of groups of people, such as maybe disabled LGBTQ or disabled people of color or neurodivergent. They just aren't talked about enough. I think it's mostly white male disabled, physically disabled people, and taught at just too late of an age, like in a master's program. Well, not everyone gets masters or bachelors. It should be taught in middle school.
Does anyone else have anything they want to share? You can raise your hand if you're thinking about it. I'll talk about teaching. Oh, go.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Now, well, in terms of impact, I remember, when I was young, I used to have long hair, and that was a big deal for some of the religious oriented people that they wanted me to cut it off. I actually cut it off after 30 years. Uh, from 15 to 45, I had that hair on me. Long, first it was frizz, and then, so the case was, that's not our tradition, that's not how it goes, a kind of thing. And then that mistagging and also pushing me to get rid of it made me actually resistant. My the people from whom I seek attention, and probably the girls liked it. So some of the comment I was getting is okay. So for those resistant people, it made me a kind of antagonistic kind of. And I used to teach biology in my early career. And I remember, not the gender specific, but we come from sex and going and then dissecting things into different thing was a big deal at that time. But currently, even not even currently, I facilitate seeking educational equity and diversity. And as you know, gender is one of the identity lines we discuss. And this season, I started to get frustrated because of the laws in the federal level. And it's like, okay, well, from the cases that has happened in Texas and some, I think Florida too. And I was like, okay, if I am, discussing this thing and somebody is trying to raise those federal laws, where is our support structures? So now these days, teaching about gender in the classroom is becoming again back to where I was 30 years ago, a taboo. And it's like, what is happening to our society? Uh, that's what I want to say.
Yeah, it is changing back to how it
Yeah.
was.
This is me.
Hello.
Yeah, sorry. I haven't met most of you, so yeah.
I get the absolute privilege of teaching in a state that has not regulated that largely, in a sense that would be restrictive. And I have a lot of confidence that, like, I mean, in the past, I have had some angry students and parents, but I work in a district that's quite supportive of talking about gender identity and expression, and going through the differences of biology and social expression, and so on, so on, so on, so on. But I'll tell that, like, we have this whole mini unit in my human rights class all about LGBTQ plus history and rights and identity and so on. And the main activity that we do, I always tell them, like, this activity is punishable in a lot of states. I could lose my license. I could go to prison in one if like the legislation stays as it is. And they're always like, we're just sitting here learning. And I'm like, uh-huh. And this is a huge privilege that we have right now, is that we are able to talk about this human rights issue and concept, and your teacher isn't scared, that you guys aren't scared, and that you are taking the time to do this human rights work of just listening and just learning and taking the time to open up your brain a little bit beyond certain constraints that, some power structures like to put on. And they're always like fascinated that when I bring up, like, this isn't allowed in a lot of places, and we're not doing anything crazy. We're just talking about how Canadian geese are frequently gay. Like, fun fact. And, and how clownfish are all, when they hatch, they're all female. Or sorry, all male. Sorry, every one of them. And then whatever one out of the pair gets stronger and more like able to protect, that one switches over to female. So thank you for bringing up that connection. Do we want to scoot into this? Unless anyone else had something that they wanted to add. Cool. Tia, did you have anything else that you wanted to add before we move into classroom application?
I was just gonna say that I'm kind of forced to teach about disability because when I bring my role later, you have to explain to the kids why I have that. With having a dynamic disability, my needs are different every day, and so it's interesting the fact that my kids are having this exposure because of me, not because it should just be a natural thing. So that's been something that I've been going through recently, of being really angry that my kids are the only ones that are getting this experience because of me. And yeah, so that's been a fun thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm oftentimes the first exposure kids have to what Tourette syndrome looks like. That's not South Park. So I don't know how I feel about that. But Christy, you have your hand up.
Yes, I was just wondering on that example, when you start talking to your kids about your disabilities, I mean, do they bring examples from home? Because I would think that maybe some of your students would also have family members who are also having various disabilities, or how are you able to bring the kind of family experiences in?
A lot of my experiences with I laugh because my kids call me old. I'm 32, so I'm not that old. But the first exposure that they get to with like a walker or rollator is their grandparents. So they like make that connection of, oh, you must be a grandparent. Thank you. I have been asked if I'm older than dinosaurs. We won't talk about it. But for the most part, it's the first time that they've ever seen anything like that. I don't have to use my rollator a lot at school, but when we go out, we have these like after hour meetups. I have to bring it there. So that conversation of it's a lot of conversation like this week because we're going this weekend to an ice castle. So of like, hey, like you will be seeing me do this. Why is it? I have POTS, so I explained to my kids this today that it's like your body is an elevator, and when you have an elevator that works nicely, it gets you to the floor that you need to go to. My elevator, I'm pulling the rope, so it's going to be slow. It's not going to work always. My needs are different on each floor, and so apparently they loved that analogy, and I don't know why. So it's a lot of just having conversations, but for the most part, they don't make the connection at home unless they have a grandparent with that. But it's still really hard to explain my disability They just know that I have my timeouts where I have to just lay on the floor. So they understand that like some days I'm better than other days. But they have never correlated it back to their, for the most part, back to their life. It would be fun if they did, because it would open up that conversation, but it hasn't happened yet. So there's
Yeah,
some.
I find most of the kids will relate. Put it this way, most of them, when they figure out, which I'm normally very open, like day one, I'm like, hey, so I can't hear you. One, I wear hearing aids. They're not great. The acoustics in this 1960s building, trash. So, like, you're going to have to speak up. And when I ignore you, it's not because I'm ignoring you unless I'm ignoring you. And you will know if I'm ignoring you. Um, it's like, I just cannot hear you. And you just need to speak up. Um, but also, you might see me do one of 45 different ticks, such as life. You will get used to it. And honestly, if I didn't tell you, there's a good chance that you wouldn't realize, because I've gotten really good at working them all into different movements. And honestly, being a teacher and being on the spectrum with Tourette's is kind of fire, because I get to teach about my special interests. So I'm just yapping all day about what I love and I'm getting paid for it. But then also, like, you have to be very active and moving all the time when you're a teacher, at least for my high schoolers. And so, like, it's heaven for someone that needs to be moving, both because they're very active, but then also, like, a lot of my motor tics, if I'm moving, I can fulfill the neurological tic while also moving. And my favorite one is, I have a tic called echolalia, where I will echo whatever you say to me all the time. And when you're just a human, it's annoying. But when you're a teacher, it's good practice, because you're repeating what the kid said another time for everyone else to hear. And I'm just like, ooh, what a little cheat. I love that. So a lot of times kids are like, they don't so much connect it to their family, but they'll connect it a lot of times to their lived experiences. Even if they're like, I have no idea what you just said with all these tick things, but you are definitely the poster child for hyperactivity. And I mess with that because I'm also hyperactive, or my brother is also hyperactive, or, you know, you get what it's like to need something different. You need to move around. Well, I need this. And I just find that they're more willing to share with me how I can be a better teacher. And I've had a few parents say to me, you know, they like having a teacher who's also a little different, because it makes them feel like they're in a space with like-minded people, which is very sweet. I really enjoy that. But I'd say that's probably the most connections they make. Mostly it's personal, which I think is special. Yeah. So this, Chris, does that kind of answer your question? Okay. So this next part that we had planned for you guys, I I'm going to show parts of it, but I'm also not confident that the audio is going to be any good. So me kind of have to make a game time decision here. But Tia and I wanted to show you guys just quick examples of how this could look in practice, like quite literally, what are some activities and some settings that look in the classroom that we actually use, and then have you do a little practice activity with your own space that you're currently existing in. So you can kind of walk away from this saying, not only did I get examples, I also, they gave me homework. They made me do something. So this first one is an example from my human rights class mini unit on disability advocacy. Is anyone here, and I guess like just put a hand up or like a little reaction thing. Anyone here familiar with the show Avatar: The Last Airbender? That's shocking. Okay, that's okay. Now you all have lots of homework. So everyone needs to, when you sign off, somehow watch the show. It's great. It's 10 out of 10. If you're interested in human rights, my God. It's a kids show though that came out in like 2004. I grew up watching it. And there's a character in it named Toph Beifong. And I always show the kids this clip of her introduction All right. There's another character who's looking for a teacher. Specifically to teach him how to do a skill that he desperately needs to do. Okay. And so I'll play this for the kids with very little context and ask them to record for me their observations of how the character is treated, viewed, and so on. What are the assumptions made about her? And what are some of the realities? All right. So we're going to be brave and try to see if I can play it. And then maybe Tia or Chrissy, if you could put in the chat if it works. Cool. Okay.
Hey, front row seat.
This is just gonna be a
Muscles. What do you think, Sokka?
Rise for Fire Nation national anthem. No, no, please.
Yeah! Woo! The boulder knows how to put the hurt in the dirt! Yeah! Woo!
So just for reference for this little montage here, we see various different fighters doing different levels of physical violence and skill. And the avatar, the bald kid who's looking for the teacher, is trying to put his finger on which one of these could be a good teacher for me.
Been waiting for the Boulder versus your champion, the Blind Bandit!
She can't really be blind. It's just part of her character, right?
I think she is.
I think she is going down!
The Boulder feels conflicted about fighting a young, blind girl.
Sounds to me like you're scared, Boulder.
The Boulder's over his conflicted feelings, and now he's ready to bury you in a rock-a-lanche.
Whenever you're ready, the Pebble.
It's on!
Your winner and still the champion, the Blind Bandit!
How did she do that? She waited and listened.
Okay. Let me go back here. Okay. So that is a small clip of the full episode that I play for the kids. Again, great show. 10 out of 10 recommend. But would anyone like to share some ideas for the observations, assumptions, or realities that this episode shows about people with disabilities? Olga, start us off.
Yeah, so this was a very catching clip. When people first saw the Blind Bandit, the crowd said, "Oh, he can't possibly do that. That can't see where the heck anything is or anything," assuming that they're stupider than normal people, assuming the blind person's stupid and incapable. And those are assumptions. But then the realities is that I heard something is that if you lose one of your senses, like hearing or blindness, your other senses get stronger, like your touch. If you're blind, your hearing and touch make it stronger. So you may be able to sense floor vibrations that other people can't sense, or hear things that other people can't sense, and vice versa. So I thought that was a very interesting clip showing the realities versus what people think blind people are.
Thank you. Would anyone like to add an example of an observation or an assumption or a reality? See, we have the superpowers lie in these other abilities. I love that. She's got that sense. It's amazing. She waited, she listens, and then she absolutely kicks ass. It's great. Anyone else want to add in even a follow-up question? Why do you think I use this clip and this character as my beacon to welcome the kids into this unit?
An example of not underestimate people just because they're different.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Don't underestimate people. Anyone have another idea here? To highlight the power in everyone, no matter what ability you may see or be familiar with. Thank you. Okay. And I will follow up saying there's a lot of really cool conversations with her, also with being a young girl. Deeply underestimated because she is young. She's like 12, 11, 12. And she's a girl. She also comes from a royal family that really infantilizes her. Her character arc is incredible. She is the easiest teaching tool. And largely through the whole series, her disability kind of takes a back seat and it doesn't become her whole character, which is super nice. So that's one example of what we use. And then
that's me. So I talked about it a little bit. In my classroom, obviously, I am not teaching them about gender. I'm not teaching them about anything like that. But it is a lot of the literature that I bring into the classroom. It is a lot of the toys and the way that I set up my classroom. I work for a Reggio-based center. If you don't know what that means, it is sad beige, and pretty much, but it's very nature as well. So it is very like homey. This is our spa area. It's not actually a spa. It's called our family resource center. But so the classroom I have is very sad and beige. But with that, it opens it up to be able to have this area that allows the children to just explore without having that temptation of this is what our boys are, this is what is for boys, this is what is for girls. In the first teaching area that or the first school that I taught at, it was very this tub is for boys, this tub is for girls. And that was my director telling me that. And I was like, okay, so I'm gonna update my resume because that's not gonna work for me. And I'm very thankful that like because what toys have are that is for girls and what toys are for boys. There's not really anything, in my opinion, that is very specific, gender specific. Uh, and even the way that the classroom is set up, it has like kind of gender in mind of where people are taking naps, where people are going to the bathroom, obviously in the bathroom, but like where it's set up design wise. But literature and like conversations, which is the top picture, is really where it kind of plays with me teaching gender in the classroom and where it is present. But like I don't actually teach them about it because they're 3 and 4. And I feel like I'm a private place and Minnesota is very it is a better state than most states when it comes to that stuff, but I also get a lot of pushback when I bring anything that is seen as controversy in the classroom. So I have to be wary because I work for private. So that is my way of kind of getting around that, if that makes sense.
sorry, I just got very lost in my tabs. I lost you guys. Cool. All right. Shall we make them do some work?
Yeah.
Yeah. We did also have this for you guys just to kind of help frame human rights education. If you need a framework or you need a way of thinking about this, there's this like kind of three-part mindset here. This idea of education about human rights, education through human rights, and education for human rights. So like those two examples we just gave of how to approach different age groups about different intersecting ideas in different parts of the country. Both of those still very much are about human rights education, giving that knowledge and understanding of human rights and principles, learning specifically how to defend themselves and just awareness of each other, and then telling them, well, now it's your turn to actually do it, which is something that I find kids and adults panic for the first 2 seconds, and then it's incredibly empowering, is that last part. So in that energy, you guys are going to do something for us. So actually two things. One, this is the first one, which this is the one we said maybe breakout rooms, right? Okay. So should we introduce both and then send everyone off to do both?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Love. So this is a two-parter. What we're asking you to do is analyze the space that you are currently occupying. Probably easiest to do that because these are very specific requirements. However, you could also think about spaces that you occupy, public, private, whatever. An activity that I have my students do in school is we get a list of the Americans with Disabilities Act regulations for schools. And I give them a checklist that is literally this one. I just copied and pasted it in there. And if you scan the QR code, that brings you to the Google Doc. And then I will actually post the link. There you go. There's the link to the actual activity. Feel free to make a copy and share. Super fun. They go running out in the hallways with their little rulers, and it gets extra fun when they inevitably find a violation because my building is very old and it's a very underfunded public school. So unfortunately, we have some violations and some broken buttons. But in that moment, we say, okay, what are we going to do about it? And I show them how to put a work order in. We go and find our local admin. We do what we need to do in order to make someone aware that there is a human rights violation taking place. And then we keep tabs on whether or not they fix it. And I make them do that. They go ahead and they put the work order in and they do all the things to kind of empower them. So the first ask of our little breakout rooms is everyone to take a look at where they're currently sitting and see if you can check for any of these ADA regulations. Again, the link and the QR code bring you to the full list for schools, not the full list, but big one. But these are things like the width of doors, is there accessible ways of getting in and out? What about parking lots? Do they have accessible parking? Is there a ramp going in and out? Are classrooms having accessible desks? What about the height of the sinks? It's my favorite one, and so on. So that's like part ask one. And then Tia, if you want to talk about the second part.
So when we were talking about this, we kind of were like, the ADA is the bare minimum of what you're supposed to be doing. And so we wanted to go further about like gender informed classrooms. Like in my classroom, we do baby circle time. If you've never heard of it, it's magnificent. Each kid gets a baby. And there's that beautiful book. I don't have creepy babies like that because those are kind of creepy, but mine are cute. And it helps with empathy. It helps with anything socially that the kids need help with. And it kind of gives them that empathy and that nurturing aspect of it. And then the gay wall, that's not mine. I wish it was.
The gay wall, which I put a picture in, forgetting that I would literally be sitting in front of it. This is just what we lovingly call the gay wall. It's in my classroom. We have our fish tank for regulating emotions, and we have that friendly reminder that gender is a wide spectrum all throughout history. The gay wall. So we want you guys to go into your little groups that I don't know how to make. So Tia or Christy can figure this out because I'm not good at that. But in your little groups, look at the space. And if you're in a house, that's great. That's honestly even better. I'm so curious about house building standards and the ADA. I even had a kid who was out when we did this because he was on a cruise and he did the ADA check on the cruise, failed miserably. And there is, in fact, ADA regulations about cruise ships, by the way. Cars, I don't care, measure it. Height from the steering wheel to the bottom. Let's go. But do your best, or at least if someone in your group has the ability to look around and see how we can reflect gender, human rights, disability advocacy, all that stuff, and yap about it as small groups, that would just be great. We'll come back and share.
Did it work? Oh, I did it. So does this mean we're our group? I literally just put them all in group or room 1. Christy? Maybe not. I think that means we're in a group. Unclear. I just clicked a button. Can you guys hear me? Brooke and Fatiam? I probably said that name awfully. I am so sorry. Mhm.
We just got zapped back to place. Oh man. Hi everyone. Sorry, one of our participants got cut off. Do we want to spend some time sharing out some of the things that we talked about? Maybe some friends from Tia's group first.
I didn't have anybody in my group.
Was I the group?
I was like, we had 22 people and now we only have 10, and there was 8 people in your group. So I think your group was the only one.
I Oh no. That explains. I was like, wow, these names are all starting to look familiar. It's the group. Well, cheers. Okay, so then my friends here, does anyone want to share out some of the things that you either learned in our group or an experience that you shared?
I'm going to start off. So I shared how antique buildings such as Victorian houses are difficult for people with disabilities to access, and how elevators on university campuses are frequently breaking down, and that can affect people who are disabled. That was two of the discussions we had. I'll leave the other ones for anyone else who wants to chip in.
Seems like our main takeaway was that there's some examples of really good gender efforts and equality taking place in some spaces, which was super cool to hear. If anyone wants to share some of those. A lot of broken elevators, though. Which ours is broken. Well, one of ours is broken right now, too. Assessing our context and space.
I mean, what came into my mind is like, okay, I talk about accessibility, but or gender, or are we really assessing our spaces and contexts and modifying it to suit that? That's what I felt I have to take.
Christy, I'm curious. I'm gonna make you participate. Christy, you inhabit a lot or inhabit, God, a lot of spaces and work in a lot of different spaces. Do you feel like gender accessibility and representation and openness is largely something that you see?
I think it depends on which spaces. I'm in here in Minnesota, and so from the University of Minnesota Law School area or the university, yes, I think that things shifted within the last 10 years to try and have both gender open bathrooms, for example. I think traditionally, like even the family wellness, centers, because you'd have family members who might have children who need changing tables. And so trying to create those separate spaces that are open and inclusive for whatever, however one might identify. So being able to go into the family spaces. And at the same time, I think that there's, depending where you're traveling, and throughout our country, you have, yeah, big differences that, and even at in airports, whether or not there are accessible kind of restrooms and facilities, or are even the changing tables only still available with one gender identified spaces or not. In Amsterdam. I was there recently, and I was very impressed with the more inclusive and openness of both the yeah, having changing tables in both. Although there was, one the father, who did not have it in one of the spaces, and so then they had to kind of adjust. So anyhow, that was top of mind. But schools, I do think that our schools are trying to here in Minnesota are trying to be inclusive as well. But I don't know. What do you think, Ari, up in New York, in your rural area? How are things on the gender and
I love this
disability?
conversation, first of all, because it's helping me think about these issues with like a new perspective. So thank you, everyone, for sharing everything. I'm realizing that in my school, we're in a very rural, um, very white school district and a small school. So I'm honestly looking through that ADA list and thinking, wow, this is good. And I want to have my sociology students, Sarah, do that same activity when we get to that topic this semester. I think that's a really, really cool lesson. But I think just going through my head and thinking about the school building itself, I think we've done a really good job with the ADA requirements. But I'm really noticing how our different genders are treated so differently in our school district. We're a very conservative district, so it makes sense in that regard. But I feel like we have so much work to do in that aspect, just regarding respect and how the girls are treated versus how the boys are treated. So that's what I'm thinking about through all this. Thank you very much.
Maura, do you want to jump in and share from North Carolina and your schools? I'm
Sure,
putting you
I
on the
think I
spot.
agree. No, you're not. It's okay. I'm currently a stay-at-home mom, so sometimes I have like this. I'm just only referencing my experience. I worked as a child life specialist in pediatric hospital setting, and I'm just thinking about those spaces versus my current life and thinking about Chrissy, what you said about it depends on where I am. I feel like as far as gender acceptance, equality, understanding, I feel like there's certain parts of where I live that I'm appalled by because I don't feel like it's accepted. And then there's the pockets of the people that I've found that embrace striving for more equality. So there's just kind of like in my everyday, in my children's schools, I feel like I'm proud that it's in the direction that I feel like it should be in. I'm also intrigued. I was, looking at your list and even thinking I'm sitting outside waiting for my child to finish his sports practice. And I'm outside this business building because it's a wrestling thing. And I'm like, I'm right next to the door and this is not a handicap space. And I'm pretty sure this is where it probably should be, like literally right next to the ramp, and it's not. But our elementary is a very old school too. And I'm just kind of thinking about that. And I'm excited to bring this to my children. I have a 11-year-old and a 13-year-old and bringing that conversation to them and saying, can you think about these things? Like when you go into your bathrooms at school, like, let's think about why this is important and giving that to them. This is something that I've really appreciated from this conversation as well.
I dropped in the chat just in case anyone's interested. A number of years ago, we worked on developing a human rights education handbook on disability rights. And so there are chapters and they talk about the sports issues and, have a number of different examples, in different spaces, and use the treaty on the UN Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities. So that, I don't know, people may be interested in kind of going that extra level, further, but we definitely did a lot of that connection around the ADA and kind of this other international treaty and, thinking about, even like conferences, when you go to conferences, whether or not, who can get in, out, what about food accommodations, and really going through all of the different needs that we need to think about and the visualizations of, as we're on screen here, what do we have to do to make sure that things are accessible?
Absolutely. I think every time you get the opportunity to like look in a space and or watch something or do something that you're like, all right, is this accessible? Putting that extra lens on of, okay, now if I'm looking at this from a female perspective, would accessibility increase? Would it decrease? And then same thing if I'm looking at this from a male perspective or lens, like would accessibility increase or decrease? Because there's a lot of realms where things like diagnoses and receiving treatment and being believed and all those things, when you intersect the female gender identity with having a disability, but even find like my teenage male students, if they're labeled as having a disability, they get very typecasted in their own heads. And people will infantilize them. They will punish them harder. Like there's these trends that take place that you're like, well, you can't quite separate the gender and the disability here. And so when you're analyzing a space that you're occupying or that, you know, you are just existing within, adding those two things together gives you like the sharpest idea of how to best help the people around you, which people with disabilities is the largest minority group in the world. Fun fact, 1 in 4 American adults. But also like gender identity, everyone's got them. And so it gives you such a good human rights friendly look at the world, I think, to put them together.
I had one aha from our group, you know, just talking about the gender, that gender now is almost taboo. At which it made me step back and think, oh my gosh, you know, in many communities right now, being able to really have these conversations within school communities, you know, is even more and more difficult within our current context, which yeah, it just made me think, and I will have to process that much more as, you know, we're going back and we think about it, you know, whether, I guess we've talked about it in the Roe v. Wade or, you know, many different contexts, but the fact that, yeah, the safety issue is going backwards sometime in many schools or many workplaces is challenging.
Does anyone else have any good parting thoughts? I know, Christy, I have 8:25 written down as a marker. Just looked at the clock. I was like,
perfect.
I don't know if anyone else has any other connections, takeaways. Tia, if you have anything that you want to add.
I just heard someone talk before I say something.
Oh, sorry, I didn't want to jump. I mean, I worked with the United Nations and I worked in a conflict area. And then I have got a first-hand abuse of power as well as, you know, so many things happening in the field. And I've seen some protection, child protection, women protection initiatives. My program was conflict sensitivity and peace building with UNICEF. It was education through the education system. So teaching about conflict sensitivity through the education system. Yeah. I have seen it in the field. Sorry. It's just because Christy brought it, and then I wanted to stick into the school. And then when Christy brought it about the law, the legal thing, that came into my mind. Sorry.
Mm-hmm.
And I always want to say, especially with disability, with someone with an invisible disability and a not invisible disability, it is crazy and worldwide of like anyone can become disabled at any point. And especially with like the spaces and like that we're occupying, um, I've put in the mindset, and I've had this mindset for a while of if I was in this set or like because I learned Braille, and I make sure that all the elevators and everything that I see that have Braille is right. And if it's not, I'm calling someone. Because not only am I doing that for someone else, I'm doing it for myself as well in case my eyesight goes away. And I might need that sometime. I think it also has like, you have to have a lot of empathy for other people and have empathy for yourself. Because I didn't have this dynamic disability a year ago. Well, I did, but I just didn't have words for it. 2 years ago, I didn't have it at all. So I think having that mindset of it can happen to any of us at any time, and where our gender is in that is very complex as well, because gender is just like Christy said, it is so taboo at the moment, and going backwards a lot. And yeah, that dichotomy of those two things is fun. But yeah, I just always want to be like, especially with disability, it could literally happen to anyone at any point.
As I always tell the kids, you don't know what tomorrow looks like. That's a threat. And they were like, you heard me. You're all 16, you're horrible drivers. I see you in the morning. But realistically, you really don't know. And that's okay, Just want to make sure the world works for you.
Well, and it made me think how much, I mean, this conversation and even language. I mean, I know that some a few people use, neurospiciness, and and yet I think there's a space for trying to even help to define some of these things, the language, because I think oftentimes, I'm sure educators, we're you only know what you know. And I think that you've both given us a great space to begin the conversation on both of these overlapping issues, from gender to disability rights. And so I just want to thank you very much. And I feel like, okay, now we need the 2.0 version, because I think it's just been fantastic. So thank you very much. Why don't we all give them a round of applause? And I'm going to drop in, realizing we're at that time, I'm dropping in the module feedback form. If you can take time to give us your insights, feedback on the session, it will be really helpful as we're continuing to try and improve things and to figure out what you like and what has been most impactful for you all. I will tell you that our next session, I should drop that in the chat, is coming up on a month from now, so March 9th. And that's going to be on AI and digital technologies navigating this current space that's challenging in terms of human rights education. And I think you all probably already have the link to the chat, but I'm going to drop that in soon. And if anyone is interested, I think you all are already very much involved, but if you're interested in participating in any of our action teams, we have action teams for Human Rights Educators USA on a variety of topics. I'm happy, feel free to reach out to me. I'm dropping my email in the chat. And I'm happy to get you connected with whatever you may need. So thank you again.
This is great. She'll make it work for you.
Yeah. And are there any other words that people want to say anything to Sarah or Tia about what you've learned?
Thank you all so much for bringing this inclusive space for neurodivergent people and other people with other types of conditions. I really appreciate it, and it's a good learning opportunity, and we need more of these, I think. Thank you.
Absolutely. My pleasure. Before I forget, I threw in a little link in the chat. If you click it, it opens up to a Google Drive folder. That is simply the folder with all of the nonsense I throw in about teaching disability advocacy. So I have a gender one as well, but it's a little less organized. It's just a lot going on in that one. If you're interested, it's there, but the disability folder is pretty succinct. If anyone ever needs any materials, please make a copy, steal them. Please.
Wonderful. A wealth of information. Well, thank you again, everyone. And I don't know if anyone has the screen. I'm trying to get the next session to pop up for me, and then I'll drop it in the chat. But you can feel free to stop the recording at this point. So thank you very much.